Welcome to your 12-minute HR lesson. Today we're going to talk about how it's really hard to enforce strictness after a period of relative laxity. But to get your head around why this is so hard and what you're really trying to do here, I've got to talk to you about wars, and I've got to talk to you about Inception. Curious? Well, let's go. This week I'm going to do something quite different to what I did last week. I'm going to take a request and I'm going to take it verbatim. A friend of mine recently asked my opinion on something. She was having a bit of a vent on a situation that she was dealing with, and then she's saying, "Oh, you should do an episode on this." And I thought, yep, you're right. This is a good one for an episode. Let's talk about it. Because people occasionally say to me, what's the hardest situations to deal with? Where do we struggle the most? One of the ones that we struggle with the most, and this is an episode for another day, is managing unrelated and irregular and intermittent illnesses in which the person is off for this, that, or the other reason, but no underlying medical reason. They're just off a lot. That's a complex one. We don't have good tools for it. We know that there's a pattern, but the pattern doesn't prove the future. We've only got correlation, we don't have causation. But that's a topic for another day. What I'm going to talk to you about today is the most difficult case to manage psychologically. When we are trying to manage people, we are trying to take them on a journey. The most difficult journey that we can take people on is from lax to strict. So before I explain the situation and what I need to do, I need to show you why it's the hardest thing to do. And to do that, I'm going to have to go slightly off course. I'm going to have to take a concept from another area to explain what's in front of us. So here's a question. How do you win a war? How do you win a battle? Your answer is wrong. You don't win a war. You don't win a battle by killing the enemy, by killing the army, by total annihilation. That essentially has never happened. You win a war, you win a battle by the opposition deciding that they don't want to keep doing it. You convince them that not fighting is their choice. That is why the Americans lost in Vietnam. No matter what number you look at, the Americans were winning, but the Vietnamese never internalized not fighting. The option of not fighting was something that they never considered doing. Not in any meaningful way, whereas the Americans did. The Americans decided not fighting was better than fighting. They internalized the decision. So you may not be the same military historian enthusiast that I am, so let me give you a different situation. Let's talk about the movie Inception. In the movie Inception, the MacGuffin is the internalization of an idea in Cillian Murphy's character's head. That is what they are trying to achieve, is him to believe something because he has decided it himself. So he doesn't reject an idea as foreign put into his brain. They are trying to get someone to internalize a concept that they are introducing externally. This concept of internalization, you also see it in the book 1984, but that's a whole other story that I'll probably never talk about. This is what we are trying to do. We're not trying to do it by manipulation. We are not trying to coerce. We're not trying to control. But our best way when we have a dispute with someone is that we are aiming for an internalization of what we want them to think, what we want them to feel, so that they will think and feel differently next time. This can be pretty extreme things. This can be pretty minor things. This can be like, hey, you need to cooperate with this other person who is prioritizing this. You don't think it's a priority. We're going to lay out the reality of the situation, so hopefully you can look at this from the total picture and recognize What they are asking was not compliance for the sake of it, but actually really important. And them to internalize that and go, oh yeah, now I get that. Okay, I'm going to stop trying to skip that part and dot all the I's and cross the T's that I ought to be doing. That is what we are hoping for when we have workplace conflict. If someone is not in line with us, we are hoping for persuasion, we are hoping for internalization so that we can rely upon them to value the right things next time. So now that's enough teasing. What am I actually talking about is one of the second worst situations to deal with. And it's in the title. The most difficult circumstance that we can find, the hardest to get someone to internalize, is where we are taking them from a state of laxness to a state of strictness, or more strict than they have previously been. They were given more laxity, they were given more discretion, they were given more room to do their job as they wanted to do, or not do it at all, and we are trying to increase the level of strictness. This is the worst case scenario. This is the hardest thing to do because the person, both consciously and unconsciously, is very comfortable with the level of discretion, with the level of flexibility, with the level of I can do my job the way that I think it should be done before, and we're trying to take away discretion. We're trying to introduce constraints. Now, there might be very good reasons. There might be actually the reasons aren't quite good enough. So if they are putting up, well, this is not fair, this is unreasonable for the following things, we need to listen to that, and maybe they're right. We should never discount that. But one of the more difficult things is where we know that we're right. We've listened to their reasons, and their reasons are reasons, but they're not good enough reasons, or they don't stack up to what we need. That is very difficult. We saw this a lot in the post-lockdown world. People who got very comfortable, very used to working from home, very used to only responding to text messages, very used to not talking to people on the phone. The question of whether or not they were giving us our full 8 hours per day or whatever their contract required, that's one thing. But also, they were also choosing not to cooperate and interact or engage with co-workers or other teams that they didn't want to. What we saw is people increasingly sticking to their own little bubbles of what they're comfortable with and shying away from the situations that they were less comfortable with. We are trying to get them to internalize and be comfortable with more direction and less freedom. Trying to get people to internalize less freedom is the hardest thing. Best case scenario, we do persuade them, we do encourage them to see that unfortunately it's necessary. If you can do that, certainly aim for it. If you can do it, well done, congratulations. But recognize you are facing an uphill battle. What do I think you should do? I think in the first instance, you need to recognize what you're asking do is a difficult thing to do. They are being somewhat unreasonable, but they are at least being predictably unreasonable. Recognizing that most people would struggle with this at least allows us to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are just being human, they are not being difficult. Second is you may need to take more time to persuade. You may take more time to explain and justify what you don't think you should have to, because you are trying to persuade someone who is not open to being persuaded. Thirdly, and I talk about this in my Hulk episode, you might just need to lay down the law. You might just need to say, well, look, I've listened to your reason, I've listened to your point of view. This is how I need things from here on in. I've listened, I've considered, here's the answer, end of discussion. Shorter one today, probably because at the end I didn't really give you any answers other than to say just recognize you're looking at something tricky, so tricky things take more time and more care. What a cop-out. Anyway, thank you for listening. have a look at our courses, have a look at our website, have a look at our services. There's lots of things that we can do for you. Maybe not now, maybe later. If you don't need us now or later, please feel free to share us around as much as you practically can. I say this at the end of every episode, but it's important to us. We're here to help people. The more people that we're talking to, the more that we can help. It might not be you. It might be someone else that you pass it on to, or it might be someone else that they pass it on to. It's all about passing these things on and creating that multiplier effect. If you can, we'd very much appreciate it. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Thanks.